Such a pleasure to speak with you both. I love The First Omen. It's one of my favorite films and performances of the year so far. And Arkasha, I was so surprised when I found out this was your directorial feature debut because it's so confidently shot. It has a great style to it. Obviously, you've done TV and shorts, but did anything kind of surprise you about the full process of putting out this big feature film, studio backed?
Yeah. Oh yeah, every day. Every day it was like baptism by fire. Yeah. No, it's what's so interesting is that this is okay, I'm gonna tell you what Sonia Braga told me when had our first day on set, and she goes, "Oh, we're not making a movie, we're making a reality, and we're gonna live in that reality for 4 months, and then maybe a film will come out of that. But that's like a souvenir of this reality." And when she said that, I was just like, my mind was blown, and it kind of changed the way I approached the film, where I was like, okay, I think with TV, you really think in shot by shot by shot. And you're doing the edit in your head. TV is so fast paced, but I think with this project in particular, it was thinking about, how does this image add to this world, and think more from like a almost atmospheric point of view and story point of view.
That's so interesting. And now I love the relationship we see throughout the film with your character and then the young actress that plays Carlita. How is it just working with Nicole and uh seeing such a young talented actress that she is because you two have some fantastic scenes together.
No, I mean it was a pleasure to work with her. She's so kind and she's so sweet and she's very strong. I mean, she had to go through a lot of crazy stuff and it was a lot of pressure and very sensitive adult material, for such a young actress. And she took it in her stride. I don't think I ever heard her complain.
Mhm.
She was so eager to learn and to watch and to like absorb. And I think she grew every day into this like formidable force. And I think she's gonna have an amazing career. And I'm gonna be cheering her on every step of the way.
Yes. We have our
Yeah.
t-shirts.
We have our Go
Sorry.
Nicole t-shirt.
Yeah.
And Akasha, when I was, to be honest, when I first like heard about this movie, I was like, oh, just leave the Omen alone. We don't need a prequel. And then I wound up loving it. But I was curious, when it comes to working on a franchise, it's kind of like a give and take because obviously there's familiarity and it has a fan base, but also there's a protective nature. People, love that film and they don't want it to be damaged. Thankfully, the reception's been super positive for this, but how does that kind of play into your end as a creative when you're playing in this field that was already established?
Yeah. Girl, me too. I was terrified. And also when I first heard about the project, I had the same reaction you did. I was like, why are you guys doing that?
Yeah,
And and then we read the script. Sorry, I'm pointing. I just feel like we were working
we
from
did
the
hold it.
day one together. Yeah. And then I read the script, and immediately, you know, the Omen is usually from male POVs, right? It's very masculine. And so to re-enter this universe through the POV of a young woman, I was like, oh, this is going to be different. This is going to be like, in a way, counter programming. And it was very, I think the way that the two worlds were connected, the first Omen with the original 1976 Omen was very clever. That was, I didn't write that part, by the way. I'm not calling myself clever, but that was already in the script.
Clever.
And I just thought that was great because my biggest fear was upsetting horror fans. Like that's like a cardinal sin. And especially with horror classics from the 70s, I feel like you have to be particularly delicate with. And so the way the script was already structured was you get to create your own thing and not step on too many toes, but then you're going to naturally bridge into the original franchise. So they set me up pretty well, I feel like.
And now I'll get straight to spoilers because there's a lot to talk about. But later on in the film, we learn that your character was spawned by the jackal. So on top of this crazy film, we also have, like this incest layer added to it. How is it grappling with just kind of the horrors of Margaret's own existence? And in your performance, what I really liked was you show this very quiet strength within her, that where she's going to keep going and she's going to protect others, because it would be so simple, and I feel like natural to almost shut down when you find out, the true nature of your character.
Yeah, well, I mean, knowing where Margaret came from and knowing her heritage, I think it was important to have like this low hum of like an animalistic strength to her that rears its head at certain points in the movie. And I think, uh, Margaret's character really is a woman becoming a mother against her will. So even though she didn't choose it, she's developing like a very protective instinct, and it emanates and comes out onto Carlita. And then that carries through when, eventually Margaret does become a mother at the end of the film. And I think she always had that protective bone in her, and it just gets exacerbated when she has a child, with or without her consent. So I think all of those colors of her was just so fun and interesting for me to play, and for me and Kash to talk about and kind of understand and learn her as I went. But yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely, knowing that her heritage and where she came from, it's an unusual characteristic to play, and which made it a very fun one to do.
And Arkasha, you made a really great point about the female point of view really helping the prequel feel fresh. And I thought another element was that rather than just being purely focused on Damien's birth, we're getting to see the more of the church and this secret sect that is going on. And but one thing that's interesting about this series is that, we had three Omen movies. It kind of petered out by the end. Sam Neill just gets stabbed. It's very underwhelming into the franchise. And, for the Antichrist, you kind of expect a bit more than what he accomplished. So when Damien, like his end is almost underwhelming and doesn't really amount to as much in universe as maybe you would expect from that first movie. How do you kind of grapple that with these films? I
Didn't
think you
want
made
to.
the yeah. But does it kind of like do you kind of feel like it almost undermines the prequel in a way, or I felt like it was enough different that it was its own thing, but it's a very odd situation.
Yeah, no, I think you bring up a really interesting point. And it's
Yeah.
something that we talked a lot about because I think, you know, just culturally, our fear in the devil has really diminished over the decades, and that he's almost become this kind of like pulp comic figure, I feel like, in film. And so, kind of really understanding what is frightening about the Omen franchise and what is frightening about this movie, I think, really is that, hell on earth is man-made, and the horrors that we inflict on each other isn't inspired by the devil, really. It's really just our own, the darkness in the hearts of man. And that's what I think is so upsetting about this film, is that there, even if you took away the satanic element and anything supernatural, it's so upsetting and tragic that all of this violence and horror would be perpetrated by, this institution that you're told to trust and love and dedicate your soul to. And a lot of inspiration came from looking at a lot of depictions and artwork of hell, of landscapes of hell, and kind of, zooming in on these images of like, animal demons disemboweling humans and stabbing them with pitchforks or ripping their stomachs open. And then thinking about the violence that Margaret goes through. There's, having her stomach ripped open, but while she's tied to a table, like there's a one-to-one parallel there. There's a very grounded reality to what we think of, you know, pictorially in our heads as depictions of hell. And so Sam Neill should call me and we can, resurrect that moment and redo it. But that's not, that's not really the horror anymore. And I think you start to see that in Omen 2 and 3. Damien owns this, he's a politician, and the family owns the Thorn Industries that is controlling the food for everybody in the world. And there's a lot of, they're really saying something with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's cool. I think there's
Yeah.
probably a reason that Damien is depicted as a human.
Yeah.
Like he presents as a human being. That's because I think humans are the scariest thing on the planet.
That's a really good point. Yeah, there's nothing supernatural about him.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And now one aspect I really like in this film is that you're not just giving birth to Damien, there's a second child, which is a huge shock. What was kind of your reaction when you read the script? Because that's such an exciting change and opens a lot of angles potentially going into the future.
It's so funny to think about because I like to think I'm giving birth to a franchise. No,
I love
like,
that.
no, I'm joking. But like, it's so funny because, when you read it, and it was like when we were making it, like that felt like the big reveal. It felt
Yeah.
like the big moment. But it's like by you get to that point in the movie, everyone's so exhausted. They're like,
Yeah.
oh my God. Do you know what I mean? Like, but I think when I read it, I was like, okay, that's really smart. I thought it was really smart to have the female counterpoint of Damien and what that could be and what that represents. Does that represent good? If he's evil, is that good? Is that it, and there's so many different ways it could go, and so many different things that she could represent and she could be. And at the end of the movie, we see her as this adorable little girl, which is of course, Damien was an adorable little boy. We have no idea what capacity for power this young girl holds. So yeah, I think it's a very. I mean, I was really excited by that when I read it initially. And it'd be cool to see what could go on with that.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm so sold on seeing this continue. And Arkasha, I wanted to ask about just the little coda at the end because it's funny to think about with what goes on in the film, but like Brennan when he comes back, he almost seems like Nick Fury. It's like he's recruiting them for like the Damien Initiative. It's
Oh yeah.
ridiculous in like the best of ways. How was it filming that little post teaser?
Yeah, our Avengers
Our
coda.
Avengers
Yeah.
Post-credit scene.
Exactly. It was so important for us to show that one, Margaret survived, and two, that she had cobbled together this family and was taking care of all these girls, trying to get over this trauma, and that they were doing quite well. And then also to show that, Brennan is still alive. And then, our production designer said, oh, this should be such a peaceful until Brennan shows up. So let's have it be snowing. And I loved that touch. And it was fake snow, but I fell for it. I like had a very magical Christmas moment to myself when
We were just frolicking through the
Yeah.
trees, me and Kasha.
it was lovely. And Nell with her gun, it
Oh
was
my
just
God,
like
heaviest thing in the world.
it was the heaviest. I'm so sorry about that. I'm so sorry. Yeah, it was delightful. Is that an appropriate answer?
It was delightful.
Yeah, for sure. And now you mentioned that even though Margaret became a mother, not by choice, that we are seeing those kind of instincts kick in. So, like, if we do get a sequel, what would you be most interested in exploring about her, her journey as a mother and where she goes from there?
I mean, I'd be really interested to see the journey of the child she bore. I mean, we know what eventually goes on to happen to Damien, and this other child, we have no idea, what her trajectory could be. And I think it would be interesting, to see Margaret grapple with, having one child that represents good and the other that represents bad, or maybe they're both bad, and how she would handle that as a mother. And I think that's a pertinent question anyway, because it's very often it happens, mothers who give birth to people that can be innately bad. And it's like, is there still a mother's love? I'd love to see what Margaret's relationship with Damien would be like, you know? Because as we see at the end of the movie, she can't, of the First Omen, where she has an opportunity to kill him, and she can't bring herself to do it. Is it a mother's love that's stopping her from doing that? Or is it, you know, even though this thing represents evil, it's a child? And it's like, it's a cool question. Like, what would you do? I'm John Quinones, and what would you do? Have you ever seen that? But yeah, so that was a very long-winded way of answering your question, but I would just be interested to see that as like a mother, how she grapples with what she's created.
Yeah, I'd love to see that too. And Arkasha, rewatching the film, I was really impressed just what a tight 2 hours it was. How was kind of that editing process? Was it much longer initially? How was it getting down to the 2 hour mark?
It's a 10-hour director's cut.
Well, it didn't help that the full frontal vagina shot
9
actually
hours of
lasted
vagina.
a minute long. Yeah. And I was just like, let's make this a short film. Yeah. It was very long. It was almost 3 hours. But I really loved all of our characters. And I felt like there were so many side stories going on with all of our characters that I really I indulged myself in the director's cut. But you know, I think what was really lovely is really getting to focus on Margaret's story. You know, I think that when you walk into an Omen prequel, you expect it to be a creepy kid movie. And really, it's much more inspired by Repulsion. You know, it's about this one woman's journey. And so once you thin it down to that, I thought it was much more powerful.
Yeah.
And then I loved nuns peeling potatoes, and that lasted for like 10 minutes.
That was
and
great though.
People were like, "You're crazy." So
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for your time today. And I'm a really huge fan of the film. So real pleasure to speak with you both, and congrats on it.
thank you so much.